On February 12, 2011, understudies from the College of Florida wandered into Ellison's cavern. However, their experience transformed into a horrible. When two of them stalled out into a pit, together they would battle against the frosty temperatures and for their lives. This is the lamentable story of the Ellison's cavern misfortune. North Georgia examiners say Perry and Locke and Boach were wearing shorts and shirts and not dressed properly for the climate, or the cavern perhaps, of the most specialized cave. In the US they have the most profound free fall pit in us. On February 12, 2011, with winter nearly gone, yet radiating outrageous cold temperatures, 10 understudies, 5 young men and 5 young ladies from the College of Florida, chose to go buckling. The lead organizer was 20-year-old Award Lackenbach, who was to praise his birthday the next week. Award, Michael, and a portion of the other stud understudies had done buckling before. Subsequently, this seemed to be simply one more experience for them. Michael and Award, however, at various college levels and divisions, were extremely dear companions. Since the two of them were scholastic researchers and Christian siblings who cherished undertakings from rock moving to skydiving, wake riding the entire way to buckle investigating. Half a month prior to the heartbreaking mishap, the two people had visited one more cavern and were completely happy with their experience as they made arrangements for the following excursion. On February 12th, they picked Ellison's cavern, a north of 1,000 ft profound cavern, which is settled in Walker Province on Pigeon Mountain in Georgia. This cavern is viewed as the 12th most profound in the entire of America. However, what's more insane is that it has the most profound, unhampered pit in the US. This pit is so profound, it is known as the Fabulous Pit, and it is very nearly twice taller than the Sculpture of Freedom. To arrive, the understudies went north of 100 miles from the college. The earlier day they arrived at Georgia in the early evening and booked a lodging near the Untamed Life, the Executives region, where Pigeon Mountain is found. The next day, they all got up excitedly and ready for the mountain. They were wearing relaxed clothing and clamored about placing their buckling materials, headlamps, caps and snags, into their vehicles. Anyway, before they began the trip, they left their telephones and brought with them just buckling basics. Abandoning their telephones would be something they would come to lament later. As the gathering advanced up the mountain, they began to stress over the cool that was strengthening as the temperature kept on dropping tragically for them. No one idea to consider the climate enough to bring thick garments along. Award and Michael were likewise dressed nonchalantly last time they went buckling, so they most likely thought everything would have been fine. Adjacent to, they weren't in any event wanting to go excessively far into the cavern. As the understudies moved toward one of the passageways of the cavern, subsequent to climbing for right around 1 hour, they were stunned by what they found. A tight opening, barbed around its edges. It was little, to the point that only each individual could cross it in turn, and with some work they couldn't see anything past this entry. Yet the murkiness of the cavern was coaxing to them, so one by. However, one they brought down their bodies into the cavern, and before long encountered an overwhelming murkiness that was step by step supplanted by their front lamplight. As the internal parts of the cavern turned out to be completely noticeable, they were stunned to see the excellence of it. Tragically, they actually had the gnawing cold to stress over in the late spring. The water in the cavern was around 56 F, so you envision how freezing it would be in the colder time of year. Subsequently, the gathering made do with a short investigation of a little piece of the cavern and would be on out, other than no one was in any event considering washing in the waters or anything. However, at that point, something startling occurred. As they were finishing their investigation, the knapsack of one of the understudies fell into an upward pit called the warm-up pit. This one isn't, however, profound as the Fabulous Pit, as it could be only 125 T. Yet it was by dangerous. The temperatures here were incredibly cold. As a result of a cascade there that thundered like a lion and chilled like Antarctica, It was anything but a spot anybody ought to enter, particularly somebody dressed how these understudies were dressed, yet the knapsack contains a few fundamental materials that the gathering would need, and it wasn't. Like they planned to spend long down there, it was simply going to be a fast drop to recover the sack. And afterward, out again being the head of the gathering award, elected to get the sack, his companions told him to not take a chance with it and simply leave the pack since they could send something terrible planned to occur. However, he didn't tune in and demanded that he would be fine, so they tapped him on the back and let him know best of luck as he made to let himself down the pit with a rope award, gradually repulsed down the pit to an impressive distance. At the point when he began to shudder somewhat as the virus strengthened, yet he hadn't gotten to the most terrible of it yet, as he moved toward additional beneath the commotion from a surging cascade close by started to become increasingly loud, yet he may as yet hear his companions talk and console him. He had gone mostly down when something horrible occurred as he dropped further award, encountered the moaning cascade previously shuddering enthusiastically. Now he attempted to stay away from the freezing water from contacting him. However, in his endeavor, the most obviously terrible happened first. He heard a boisterous, shocking sound come from his tackle. What's more, rope he had quit moving with his shuddering. It wasn't difficult for frenzy to fill his veins, so he began shocking with his rope and bridle to attempt to inspire it to work once more, yet his endeavor just implied that the rope folded over him further. Then his most horrendously terrible trepidation happened as he attempted to get himself out of the entrapment. The super cold water doused him at this point. He was at that point shouting as loud as possible for help. However, his yells were stifled and choked by the thundering cascade, and his shuddering mouth. By and by his companions heard him and yelled back. They generally took a gander at one another, confounded and stressed, yet Michael felt free to one similar rope his companion had involved down as he plummeted to save his companion. He cried at him to hold on, and before long arrived at a ward who had become sluggish and indistinguishable with words and development, put something aside for his serious shudders and confounded state. He was depleted. Furthermore, could bungle his hands. Michael shouted this update towards his companions above, who were marginally feeling better, yet couldn't anticipate what occurred next. As Michael attempted to wring his companion free, he also became trapped by the rope. Far and away more terrible, his body was likewise being absorbed the very chilly water that was at that point freezing his companion to death. Understanding that he also couldn't drop neither up nor down the rope, he began shouting for help too. On hearing this, their companions above were tossed into a furor, yet expected to move quickly. Some of them remained behind, while the others advanced out of the cavern. The ones that remained kept speaking with the young men beneath, giving them inspirational statements they appealed to God for. Also, guaranteed them that help was on the way. The people who made it out began slipping the mountain with all the strength they could assemble, and in under 30 minutes, they were at its floor with hands shaking and eyes hazy. They recovered their telephones that they had left in the vehicle and fast LLY called the specialists. At that point it was 2:19 p.m. Back in the cavern, the voices of Michael and Award were developing fainter and fainter as the virus tore into them. Their companions above were dreading the most terrible would occur and were putting forth a valiant effort to energize and make them oppose, while salvage was on the manner in which the virus was spending every one of their body's energies, their respiratory frameworks. Furthermore, hearts were fizzling, and after something like 30 minutes of speaking with their companions over their voices couldn't be heard any longer, their companions were crushed to see the rope that the young men utilized down hung marginally all over. Inevitably different companions who had left before got back with the province's cavern in precipice salvage group, and keeping in mind that piece of the salvage group was offering treatment against hypothermia to the 8 different understudies, different heroes immediately slid down the pit and found Michael and Award swinging from the rope at 3:30 p.m. They checked for their heartbeats, however saw none they were at that point. As past the point of no return they imparted their discoveries to those above affection, and the cavern reverberated with vast cries and wails. As different individuals attempted to support the lamenting understudies, those who had plunged down the pit dealt with an immense issue. Getting the young men off of the entrapped rope was incomprehensible. Similarly, as the brave Michael had found it hard to protect his companion, even these accomplished heroes likewise struggled with prying their bodies free. The main contrast was they were fashionable for the disagreeable climate and furnished with different safeguarding devices. So they went to work. Their endeavors went on for 6 hours and just arrived at culmination around 10 p.m. At the point when they were at last ready to deliver the young men from the destructive hold and pull them up the pit, their companions separated once more when they saw Michael. Furthermore, it was an extreme misfortune for their families, and the College of Florida Award was a splendid understudy of social science. In his last year, the award Lockenbach Dedication Reserve was laid out to give grants through the partnership of Christian competitors. Michael was another scholarly virtuoso. What's more, due to his valor and attempting to save his companion, he was honored with a Carnegie Decoration from the Carnegie Legend Reserve Commission. The branch of expressive arts likewise made a Michael Pye Dedication Grant Store, which is granted to understudies on the Gator Walking Band. That statement shows strength of character, liberality, richness. Furthermore, commitment to the Gator Band. These were the various scribes that accomplished jumper Marson K had when he went into the Weeki Y cave, not expecting the misfortune that was going to happen. Click here to watch that horrible episode.